Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here before 9 a.m. When Chainlink asked me to talk about Metaverse, I said, of course. And then they told me I had 15 minutes, and I said, challenge accepted, I guess, because as anyone who has been paying attention for the last year would know, speaking about the Metaverse in 15 minutes is no easy task. So I hope to make my way through these slides with some efficiency and maybe even leave a minute or two for questions or to speak after the presentation. So the first slide, level setting. What is the Metaverse, this nebulous term? Many people in this room may have heard of or read the writings of Matthew Ball, who is formerly the head of Amazon Studios, luminary, author, and advisor to Polygon Studios. Over the course of 2020, while we were dealing with the pandemic, Matthew Ball was wrestling with this term Metaverse. So as you can see on the screen here, his definition, I won't read through it. I'll just highlight those key terms in purple. Interoperable network, virtual worlds, synchronously and persistently, that gives an individual sense of presence and a continuity of data. The way I like to boil that down is the convergence of our digital and physical selves. Thinking of the Metaverse as an asymptote, which is a curve that approaches a line infinitely but never actually touches it, that curve being our digital selves and that line being our physical selves. So before we get into the framework for the Metaverse, I like to lay out a slide that hopefully breaks a little bit of ice and gives you the warm and fuzzies if you're an elder millennial or younger Gen Xer. But at one point in time, we went online, right? We announced to our friends and family that we were online. Don't bother me, I'm going online, right? The modem would chirp, you make these weird noises, and you would detach yourself from this physical world and now be plugged into the internet. We said weird things like information superhighway, the World Wide Web. All of that went away over time as the internet was tucked under sort of the content that lived above it. It would be really weird right now for anyone who's looking at their phone, or if we're recording this, which I think we are, or if there's an internet connection pulling this, to say that any of this is online, right? That's a very reductive, silly thing to say. If we said that, people would look at us funny. And I think that we will stop talking about the Metaverse. We will have achieved Metaverse when we stop saying it. So how do we stop saying it? Well, there are 8 points, 8 pieces of a framework that is laid out by Matthew Ball that I subscribe to. This is a belief that I join him in. 8 pieces of a framework that lays out how to achieve Metaverse. That 12 o'clock handle there, hardware, oftentimes in popular culture and the zeitgeist, it's very easy for one to lazily think of the Metaverse as hardware, VR and AR, right? That's something that the media often confuses. It's very easy to say there are many metaverses, and all of it exists in some sort of VR. And in some instances, that VR is controlled by a single entity. This framework rethinks that reductive idea and lays out other things that are needed to actually achieve this blending of a physical and digital reality. On the right side are some things that do get reported in the media, things that you may know, depending on how much time you spend thinking about this subject, the bandwidth that's needed to actually give a persistent and real-time connection, the compute that's needed to actually crunch the physics calculation, the rendering, and the reconciliation and synchronization of the data required for the Metaverse. These virtual platforms, from Meta's Oculus to Sony PlayStation to your average PC to your phone, the actual platforms that are built thereupon that delivers the Metaverse. Once you get to 6 o'clock, it starts to get interesting for me as someone who works in Web3 at Polygon, because you start to reach crypto concepts. So this idea of interchange. How do we develop these tools and protocols that develop standards to actually deliver a unique but also synchronized experience across different platforms? Payments, easy way to understand that, cryptocurrencies. How do we use internet-native money inside these platforms? Content, that's a synonym in this case for this presentation for NFTs. Non-fungible tokens, things that are built on top of the Metaverse, things that are easily transferable, that represent scarcity, that represent actual ownership and self-expression. And then finally, the concept that oftentimes gets overlooked, and I think is one of the most important concepts here, user behavior. we could have the best hardware, we could have the most powerful computation, we could have the best networking, but if the user doesn't want to adopt the metaverse, if the user opts out of these technologies, we simply will not achieve it. So moving on, I often like to talk about the transition from Web 1 to Web 3. At the bottom there, underneath Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3, you'll see read and write, and own. I think this narrative is well understood. This is something that's talked about in the press. If you've been in any Twitter spaces that touches on metaverse, gaming, NFTs, you will have heard someone from the cognoscenti talk about these sorts of things. But to add a little bit more context to this, in my position, why I find this interesting as someone who works on decentralized applications that are building inside the metaverse, I like to think of how we access information. And in Web 1, we accessed information, and we still have the relics of this, of course, through a mouse. We pointed, we clicked, we grabbed, we dropped with a mouse. In Web 2, we currently use our fingers on a touchscreen. And in Web 3, to understand how the metaverse comes into existence and how we get beyond the term metaverse and actually just start using these applications, that's through the avatar. We just will access information much the same way we do in the physical world. We will be persistent and present within these environments, and we will simply access the information through these avatars, which, sidebar, we could have a separate conversation about. I personally believe the avatar economy, fashion, self-expression, digital identity is one of the great Trojan horses that will bring mainstream adoption to not only Web 3, but metaverse. So on 2 slides previously, I had a point that said content. I said loosely content, we can understand that as NFTs. I like to talk about the flywheel of NFTs, inserting an NFT into any given situation. In this instance, the social layer of the metaverse, or games that play into this concept of a metaverse that make up the patchwork of virtual platforms that deliver a singular metaverse. To think about the flywheel that is developed from inserting NFTs into any platform and any situation. That's to say, you engage, you play. As you interact, as you meet people, as you quest, you level up and earn. You are delivered an NFT, which is, in some instances, best understood as just a receipt for the activity that you engaged in. And usually that receipt represents a physical item. Inside the metaverse, that will be anything from a digital shirt to a coffee cup. And in most instances, they will be relatively valueless in terms of an investable asset class, but very valuable in terms of gamifying the human experience for marketers to understand how to actually engage with you more, to deliver more of an experience. So as you trade and buy and sell and profit, which is ancillary to what's actually going on with these NFTs, you are simultaneously customizing and improving your experience because that data on a public blockchain is available to marketers who can actually deliver you a better branded experience within these virtual worlds. And that flywheel just continues, and it really turns passive consumerism into very active superfans. If anyone has spent any amount of time inside the Clone X Discord or any other what we would call blue chip PFP project Discords, you would see just how engaged these superfans are. So where does Polygon come into all of this? Well, we're big believers that it's going to be built on Ethereum, that Ethereum will be the global settlement layer for blockchain, and that layer 2s will exist as execution environments to help speed up the transaction throughput of Ethereum. So that's why we developed Polygon. Point number 3 on this slide is a bit old. Post-merge, that no longer is the case, environmental unsustainability, but as I had mentioned previously, we exist to increase the transaction throughput of Ethereum, and part of that is to also decrease the transaction costs. And this is redundant. I already said that. That is why we developed Polygon. So some statistics on Polygon, 99.9% more inexpensive than block space on Ethereum, 200 times faster than Ethereum. We are carbon negative. And we also have the largest ecosystem in Web3 with 40,000 dApps developed on our platform. Now, that is super interesting for anyone who's building because of the concept of composability, delivering an experience across different decentralized applications. pulling information from those applications, in some instances using their technology composably, in other instances gamifying their user base through NFTs, airdrops, claim drops, rewarding people for their behavior, that sort of idea. But this very composable, highly robust ecosystem is what we are known for at Polygon. And with that, decentralized application builders are really seeing that, particularly vis-a-vis the decentralized metaverse. So you may know some of these platforms. I hope you do. Decentraland, Sandbox, Somnium, Voxels are some of the more widely known and celebrated virtual worlds that are using blockchain technology. But I like to say that anyone who is building any sort of platform with any level of cachet, user base, or innovation is considering Polygon, and we're here to help you develop those platforms. We're also home to some of the most promising games that also represent that constellation of virtual worlds that will make up the metaverse. And some of the largest and most important IP endemic to Web3 is noticing. So you will see some of these blue chip communities like Cool Cats and Cyberkongs develop their games and their social layer on Polygon technology. And that's because, as you can see on the right here, we have that tremendous ecosystem that's highly composable that they can tap into and help develop new experiences within their games and virtual worlds. And culturally relevant IP is taking notice as well. Most recently, we made an announcement with Starbucks that they will be delivering their loyalty rewards program on Web3 through Polygon. Because of very tight NDAs, can't really go further than that. But the industry has celebrated that as a very real, tangible sort of example of how real-world IP will be using NFTs beyond asset classes to gamify the experience of interacting with their brand. And finally, this last slide here is a little bit long and confusing. There's a lot of arrows and a lot of logos on here. But this slide can be best understood as Polygon's here to be a solution provider for anyone building Web3 applications, as opposed to a monolithic piece of technology that solves a singular problem. We have our proof-of-stake public network that we're most known for. Very robust, has been around for years, does millions of transactions a day with 99.9 ad infinitum uptime. We are known for our ZK rollup roadmap, most recently open-sourced our ZK EVM, moving to testnet imminently, and also our enterprise-grade Supernets, which is meant to be an Ethereum-native Internet of blockchains. That's to say, your own dedicated server whereby you can have your own permissioned blockchain secured by our validator set, our professional validators, our existing security and technology. So with that, I made it through in less than 15 minutes, so got one victory for the day before 9:30. Thank you guys. Enjoy the conference, and I hope to see you out there.